My name is Leo. I help online entrepreneurs legally reduce their taxes, and today we're going to talk about why Paraguay tax residency is a scam. So, Paraguay has a territorial taxation, which means that you're only taxed on the money you source locally from Paraguay, which means you either have clients in Paraguay or you're actually running operations from Paraguay. That's the only instance where you'd get taxed, which never really happens. So, in the ideal scenario, the people that sell you this Paraguay dream, they say you have this US LLC that doesn't pay any corporation tax, right? Because it's a disregarded entity, so it's taxed by transparency. And then you're tax resident in Paraguay that has territorial taxation, so you don't actually source any income from Paraguay, so you get to pay 0% tax in Paraguay. So you get £1,000, it comes in, it pays no corporation tax because the LLC pays no tax if you're not engaged in trade or business in the US. And then when you take that money out, you also pay 0% tax because Paraguay is not supposed to tax you, right? Because territorial taxation, this money is earned from abroad, so Paraguay doesn't tax it. So £1,000 comes in and £1,000 comes out, right? That's the dream. So how do you become a Paraguayan tax resident? First off, because if you're a Paraguayan tax resident, these are the rules, right? And you're allowed to do this. So let's see it. You need to get a temporary residency permit, which is cedula. You have to apply for a tax ID, the RUC, and then you need to file monthly VAT declarations. Even if it's nil returns, that's fine. And this supposedly is enough to show to the Paraguayan government that you have economic substance because you've got a tax ID, because you're filing your monthly VAT declaration. So basically you're eligible for Paraguayan tax residency and it's active. And for all means and purposes in Paraguay, this is completely fine. Under Paraguayan tax law, this is enough. You know, you just need to enter every 2 years to keep your residency permit active. And then you're fine. Like, Paraguay allows this. If you go and ask the Paraguayan government, hey, can I do this? Can I become a tax resident? They're fine with it. It's completely fine. You just need to enter every 2 years to keep your residency permit active. Now, where does this go wrong? Why does it not work? And the reason is your home country. It's fine on Paraguay's side, but it's likely not fine on your home country's side. A lot of people who have tax residency in Paraguay think they can stay 5 months and 3 weeks in their home country just because it's under that 183 days taboo word, and then spend 2 days in Paraguay and claim Paraguayan tax residency. They're like, I'll spend 5 months and 3 weeks in Italy if I'm Italian, and then spend 2 days in Paraguay, and Paraguay will be my tax residency. I'm actually not spending 6 months anywhere. And this is why it doesn't work, because Western countries, yes, they have this requirement where if you spend 183 days, you're a tax resident. In most countries, if you spend over half a year in their country, regardless of what visa you're on, you're going to be considered a tax resident in that country. But what no one tells you is that if you spend less than 183 days, it's not that you're not a tax resident. The answer is it depends. If you spend less than 183 days, then what they do, these countries, these European countries, you know, France, Italy, Germany, whatever, they look at your center of economic interest. It's like, okay, where's this guy banking? Like, what are his active bank accounts? Where does he own stuff? Like, what's his habitual abode? What's his domicile? And you get into like more complex topics, you know, civil residency and tax residency kind of crossover when it comes to these European countries. So you need to know like the civil side of it as well. But basically, if your parents have a house, because, you know, you're probably watching, you're in your 20s, maybe early 30s, you don't own a home, you have an online business, but your parents probably still have a home. So that's still your habitual abode. Like, that's your domicile. That's the place you can go back to whenever you want, right? So even if you spend less than 183 days, if you spend 5 months, but you're using your home country's bank account and your parents have a house, it's not going to work. Like, this European country, you know, whatever that is, Italy, Spain, Germany, you know, whatever, they're going to consider you a tax resident for tax purposes. They're not going to care about you spending 2 days in Paraguay and claiming tax residency. So, key points to take home from here is technically you can do whatever you want until you're challenged. If no one questions your tax setup, by default, you're okay. And then you need to give the least amount of ammo to other countries. So again, ammo, what constitutes ammunition? It's basically building a case, right? And the more money you make, the more airtight you want your case to be. You're giving ammunition to your home country for them to build their case that you're actually a tax resident back home if you're using your home country's bank account, if you own stuff, if you spend a lot of time in the home country. So again, I've just said them, but these are the main things you'll be challenged on if you have your tax residency in Paraguay. Your home country country bank account usage, you're not going to use a fucking Paraguayan bank account, right? You're going to use your home country, and not that you can't use it, you can, but once you're making a lot of money, Italy, for example, they're going to question it and they're going to say, wait, hold on, I thought you said you were resident in Paraguay, why is all this money coming into this Italian bank account? Actual time in the country, spending 3 days a year in Paraguay, are they going to accept that tax residency? Probably not. Spending 5 months in Italy, are they going to consider you a tax resident? Probably yes. And finally, asset ownership in your home country. So all the stuff you own, you probably don't own a lot of stuff, but all the stuff that you do own is going to be in your home country. And this counts for Australia as well, Canada. UK is a bit different, but in general, like, you don't own anything in Paraguay. So this is the main things that you'll be challenged on, and the reason why it doesn't work. Because you're using your home country's bank account, because you're not actually spending any time in Paraguay and you're spending all of your time back home, and you own stuff in your home country. And obviously the key caveat is this happens when you're making a lot of money. Because look, I'm going to be honest, if you make like 50 grand a year, no one's going to care. You can do whatever you want. 100k a year. No one really cares. If you declare like tax residency in Paraguay and then you live back in your hometown, yeah, maybe you'll get challenged, but it's very unlikely. You need to think of these tax offices like businesses. They're trying to spend 10k in wages to these tax officers to get back 100k. If they're only going after 10k in unpaid tax or 20k in unpaid tax, they're not going to want to invest more than like 2 or 3k, and that's usually not enough to start an investigation. They're going to want to go after the big fish, right? If there's like 5 million of unpaid tax, they're going to happily spend like 100k, 200k, 300k as a business on these officers to investigate these, these cases, case by case. So when you are making a lot of money, you're more likely to be challenged on this stuff. So when can it actually work? Because there's a lot of people talking about Paraguay, and there's a reason why they are, and it can work when you're a pure nomad. So if you spend 1 to 2 months max in your home country and you do completely remote work, no employees, no fixed offices, but you're actually traveling around, like you're getting your passport stamped and you're not actually living anywhere, it can work. When you spend most of your time in South America, that can be your base there. If you spend most of your time in South America, Paraguay can very much be your base. That works. Or if you actually live in Paraguay, which at the moment, infrastructure is not great. I'll be honest, I've never been, but I know people who have. They've said, look, it's not really a great idea. And again, always remember the caveat: when you're making a lot of money, it's just not going to work. Even if you're a pure nomad, if you're making like over $1 million, then that's just a big red flag. You're not going to have $1 million in your Paraguayan bank account. People are going to ask questions. So it can work when you're a pure nomad. You spend like 1 to 2 months max in your home country, but again, like there's still the issue that you're using your home country's bank account, which again, it can be all right, but for like a lot of money, when we're talking, 6 figures, like multiple 6 figures, that's going to be a problem. Unless Switzerland or Singapore opens your bank account, and then you don't have to use your Australian or Spanish bank account, you can use a Swiss bank or a Singaporean bank, then whatever. But by that time, you're probably not going to have your tax residency in Paraguay. So like, to be honest, it doesn't really work. But what I just recommend is like, start from where you actually want to live. Like, don't think about taxes. Like, think about, where do you actually want to live? Where do you want to spend your time? Maybe you don't want to leave Europe. There's plenty of options in Europe. Cyprus, Malta, Ireland, Romania even. There's plenty of options in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. Like, why do you have to go to Paraguay? Sure, if you're living in South America, it can work. But don't just go to Paraguay because all these people are telling you about it. So before I leave you, I wanted to talk about F1 drivers, because they've kind of mastered the art of like paying 0% tax while spending minimal time where they are tax residents. And this is Monaco, obviously. If you don't know, most drivers have their tax residency in Monaco. Monaco has no income tax, so basically people who live there just pay no tax. It's the way it is. Obviously, you need to own a house. Houses cost like loads of money, so it's not as easy. Not anyone can move to Monaco. But yeah, they don't really spend a lot of time in Monaco because they're traveling every single weekend, right? They're in a new country for work, so they technically are like, they're effectively the nomads. Obviously, they've got a place in Monaco, but they don't really spend any time in Monaco. I know it's a weird parallel, but you in Paraguay are kind of the same thing. You only spend maybe like a week, 2 weeks a year in Paraguay, and then the rest of the time you're traveling for work. But the reason why they get away with it, and you probably won't, is because they don't spend a lot of time in their home country. They're not spending 5 months in their home country. Like Verstappen is not spending 5 months in the Netherlands because he's traveling. To be fair, I don't even know if Verstappen has his tax residency in Monaco. I think he does anyways, because it's Sinner tennis, right? He doesn't spend 5 months a year in Italy. So number two, they don't use their home country's bank account. Verstappen probably doesn't have a lot of money in his Dutch bank account, or if he does, you know, he's got a lot more money in Monaco and Switzerland. They probably don't own a lot of stuff in their home country, but they own a lot of stuff in their new place of tax residency in Monaco. And they have a house in Monaco that they can call home. So again, they barely spend any time in their home country, which, you know, for Paraguay, you'd be spending 5 months or 4 months even, that's a lot. They're not going to be using their home country's bank account. They probably have bank accounts in Monaco and Switzerland. And again, you don't. Lewis Hamilton probably owns stuff in the UK, but his assets in Monaco compensate for it. He's probably got a car with a Monaco plate. Like, he's got stuff in Monaco, and, you know, you probably don't own anything in Paraguay. And they have a main residency that they can call home. They own property in Monaco, or they rent it at least for 12 months a year. Like, they're not Airbnb-ing stuff. They have like a proper residency permit, you know, they own stuff. And again, you probably don't in Paraguay. So this is the reason why they can get away with it, and you probably don't. So if you're thinking about Paraguay and you're not planning on living in South America, and you are planning on spending quite a bit of time in your home country, then I would rethink my options. If you have any questions about this, just leave a comment or drop me a DM on Instagram. I'll be happy to reply.